Okay, hello, this is Ben from notesfromspain.com, and I'm going to show you some of my favourite books ever written about Spain. The first one is called The New Spaniards by John Hooper, and it deals with the transition period from the end of the Franco regime in the mid-70s up until, well, this copy I've got was kind of up until the mid-90s, but I think there's an updated edition now. Required reading for anyone that wants to know anything about Spain. It's absolutely fantastic. Another one which I loved was As I Walk Out One Midsummer Morning by Laurie Lee. This guy, when he was young, got his violin and walked from the very top of Spain to the very bottom. And when he got to the bottom, the Civil War was just breaking out. It's very lyrical, beautiful descriptions. It's the Spain all of us wanted to visit, but obviously couldn't because we weren't born yet. Another classic in that kind of, hang on a minute, this was published in, I think it's good to know when these things were published, first published in 1969. Okay, this is another 60s book, Spain by James Morris, the travel writer who was a woman and then became a man, or the other way around, I can't remember. Now this one was first published also in the 60s, in 64. And, well, also this very famous travel writer just kind of travel around to out of the way places in Spain like Avila and Segovia, and again described the Spain where all the old women wore black and sat on the side of the road selling strawberries and so on, and it's just classic, beautiful travel writing. Now, Gerald Brennan would have been the reason I moved to Spain probably if I'd read this before I got here, but I read it after I got here. I moved here for different reasons, but classic book. This guy, let's see when this was published. I think it was just after the First World War. No, well, it was first published in 1957, but I think it was after the First World War. Brennan walked he walked into the Alpujarra Mountains below Granada, walked into a tiny village, I think it's called Yegin, and got to know all of the locals, basically lived there, had several thousand books shipped out which he just sat and read. And when he wasn't reading his books and interacting with the locals, he was walking over the local mountains, walking down to Almeria, and the descriptions of life in Spain in those days, in the 20s or 30s I think, are marvellous. Best read. Another author I like is Norman Lewis. This one's called The Tomb in Seville, which I don't think is so memorable, but he's got a classic, not this one, another one called Voices of the Old Sea, which is set on the Costa Brava in the 50s, so after the Second World War, when Franco's in full rule, and it's a great book, Voices from the Old Sea, or Voices of the Old Sea by Norman Lewis. Look it up. But he describes this town just living completely out of the way of everything. This tiny village, in fact, a fishing village on the coast, and big characters, local characters are described, like the local prostitute who all the fishermen go to when their wives won't let them sleep with them because it's a dangerous time of the month and they don't want any more children, and things like that. And rivalry with other local villages. It's where I learned things like butchers in Spain always leave the heads still today on rabbits and hare, because it was the law back then in case butchers tried to pass cat off as rabbit or hare.
There is actually, sorry to interrupt you,
there's an interruption from behind the camera.
There is actually a saying in Spain saying, no me des gato por liebre.
No me des gato por liebre, don't you dare try and give me cat instead of hare. So that's why, anyway, that was from Voices of the Old Sea by Norman Lewis. And finally, this book, I've got no idea where this came from, where I got it from, but it's called The Spanish War by Ernest Hemingway. It's missing the page, the title page and everything. But it is classic. I don't know if you like Hemingway or not, but it's reports of his from different fronts during the Spanish Civil War that he was reporting on. So here we've got section 3, Teruel. In the biggest upset expert opinion has received since Max Schmeling knocked out Joe Louis, the Spanish government forces, while all the world awaited a Franco drive, launched a large-scale surprise offensive against Teruel on Wednesday morning. Fighting for 3 days in a blinding blizzard, by Saturday night they had forced the defence line on Cemetery Hill in the outskirts of Teruel, and so on and so on. Or, let me think. Its defences fell back into Teruel, and a little later in the afternoon, as we watched another battalion break through the concrete emplacements of the cemetery, the last defences of Teruel itself were squashed or turned. It's just classic war reporting from the old master himself. So those are a few of my favourites. There's a good discussion about this going on in the notes from Spain.com forum. See you there.